track that I'm using. It's very like 80s retro vibes.
Are you playing music in the background? Because I am
Very,
not.
very low. Very low.
Yeah, I've just been keeping it just talking. I can add music if I really want to add like a certain kind of background music. I can add music whenever we're
Oh, you're
putting them
live?
out.
Okay, let me go live then.
What is that feedback?
I don't know. I'll hear it. Could be
It's
on
just
your
every
end.
once in a while. It's kind of like now I'm not hearing it, so I don't know. Weird. And let me pull up. Not now. View tab. I'm gonna pull up the Confide page real quick.
Sure. What's up, Luis? What's up? What's up, buddy?
That angry therapist guy is really good, though. I think we should definitely plug that.
Yeah. No, Angry Therapist is really good.
Point
I've
people in
enjoyed
that
him.
direction, you know.
Ryan says, "I got your language of life right here, buddy." It flips me off. What a
It do be
friendo.
like that.
It do be like that sometimes, but it's okay. I know it's all love. Right. Okay. Cool. 6 reactions and Streamlabs caught none of them. Gotta love Facebook.
Yeah, my alerts are also not on when I do this because I don't want them just popping up and we're just sitting here talking about mental health and it's like tickle Bix. Give it a solid like few more minutes. Let everyone that's gonna get in here, and then we'll start talking about how we did on the homework. If you guys are in here, say what's up in chat. Let us know you're here. Hello, Faya. How are you? How was your week? I need to post those videos too of the last episodes. I have them all ready to post. I just haven't posted them yet. So how did your week go overall, Mike?
It was good. It was good.
Anything
I mean,
big happen? Anything special?
not particularly. There was one time I think I could have used NVC, but I didn't, which is fine because it's all about learning.
Yeah.
And I think it was the same day that we did the podcast too, which was even funnier.
All fresh on your brain and everything.
Yeah, fresh and everything. And I'm just kind of like,
nonviolent shit.
right. It just shows you like how programmed we are to like not talk like that.
Yeah, to
and
just keep
how
walking the same
exactly. It's really difficult to break out of that pattern, you know. So, and to keep expressing your needs as judgments, you know. or evaluations or whatever it is, right? Because those are just alienated. The way he says it in the book is they're alienated expressions of our own needs, and that makes it so that people aren't. It just doesn't make people wanting to help you that much when they feel like they're getting judged or shamed or
Right.
criticized. So,
100%.
but yeah, I mean, in terms of like the meat, we kind of went over last week what it was, what it wasn't, what kind of motivation you need or should have, I should say, um, when you're using it. This week, depending on time, obviously, there's four parts to the actual process mechanically. Now that we understand like how to use it, what the motivation should be, because the motivation is first and foremost. If you're using NVC to control somebody and to make them do something that you want them to do without being attentive to their needs empathetically, then you just might as well just boss them around and tell them that you're going to punish them if they don't do that, right? There's many other ways to communicate, not violently, where you can get the same result if your motivation is just to control, right? So
Right.
right, Michael, you're trash, my guy, get looped. I know, right? DVD is a completely different form of communication in general.
That's the best place to practice.
It's the best
It,
place to practice NVC. My
not
feelings for safety are not
non-violently
being met.
talking.
I feel really scared. May I
Oh,
request of you
dude.
to stop tunneling me
We need to do a whole stream, a whole Dead by Daylight
on
stream
DVD
of
NVC? Yeah.
us just trying to non-violently communicate with each
All
other
right.
and with
We
the
are we are
killer
we
while
are 0 for
playing.
15. It makes me feel scared that you failed the skill check
I'm
because my need for safety isn't
overstimulated.
being met. Oh man. May I request that you don't fail any
That's
more skill checks?
content. We're doing that. That's content.
Right.
That'd be
Yeah,
so
so good.
fucking to get
We
Jinx.
Oh
Oh
man,
man, that'd
0 out
be
of
so
10
funny. And
escapes.
Stu.
0 out of 10 escapes would be had.
Oh, it'd be
Because we
so
would just
funny
we would
though.
just we would just stand there and like beckon to the killer and be like, "Yo, dude, you want to be friends?" And then they would just kill us. We'd be like, "Well,
Trapper
that's okay,
puts the trap on the
right?"
ground. That's a really nice trap, but could you like
It's
put it over here instead?
yeah, not in front of the window.
Like, come on.
That would be funny.
Oh, that'd be
Ramsey down.
great. New YouTube series. Nonviolent
Right.
communication in video games. Playing Warzone.
Yeah, playing Warzone, bro. I don't really like being shot at me from that other roof, man. Makes me feel really sad and scared because
I'm
my
actually
need
very
for safety
insecure with the
and
fact that you are holding a sniper.
Yeah,
If you could please
funny.
put that down for a moment.
Yeah.
Please don't refer to yourself as goated at DBD. It makes me feel inadequate.
Lol,
Okay,
Michael.
Paul.
I better get shout out for contributing to that idea. Lol.
That's so funny.
I'm the one who beckons to the killer. Unfortunately, I'm always thinking these bitches are going to give me hatch or something. I mean, they do sometimes. They do sometimes.
Please,
They do
sir.
sometimes. May I have some more hatch, please? But mechanically, I mean, it's OFNR, which is observation, feeling, need, request. So depending on how much time we have, we can go into each one of those. There's a little bit of nuance to each one because, again, much like I've disclosed in the beginning of this call, it's really difficult to get out of what we've learned our entire life and to communicate in this particular fashion. And it might seem weird or strange. It's almost like when you first go to the gym and you can't lift X amount of weight because your muscles just aren't big enough, strong enough, it's about activating and using this kind of communication line more actively, more and more so until you kind of grow it like a muscle and it becomes something that you can implement and apply basically to any situation.
Yeah,
The
it's
placement
about
of the trap. Yeah.
taking baby steps. That's one of the really big topics that we had in the
coffee
stream
talks.
last week with Raz. Yeah, was how everything you're not just going to be able to stand up and run a marathon, And
Exactly.
That's
Yeah,
the same
it's
thing
step by step.
with mental health measures and learning how to communicate, learning how to show love to others, and everything in between. It's actually a very large process of baby steps, and
Right.
being okay with taking baby steps. So I had 2 separate instances of NVCs last week. It was interesting. It was interesting to see the difference in how my communication went with these people as opposed to what it could have been in a normal scenario. But I went to the coffee shop to get some coffee, and there's this he looked like a little nature kid, right? But he was my coffee barista, and he complimented my wallet because it has Overwatch on it. So he actually started the nonviolent communication. I just kind of rang off of it and was like, okay, yeah, let's talk. And so he brought up my Overwatch wallet, and I showed him my big titty May on the back of my leg, which is a
Mm-hmm.
character from Overwatch, and he
Yeah.
flipped out. And I complimented his shirt. Naturally, a compliment for a compliment. If you guys never know what to do when someone gives you a compliment, for the record, you can never go wrong just giving them a compliment back. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what the compliment is. You can tell them they have nice eyebrows for all they fucking care. A compliment's a compliment, and it just balances out in the end. It'll make you feel a lot more comfortable because, like, I have a lot of self-esteem issues. So when I receive a compliment, a lot of the times I don't know how to take them completely, because a lot of the times I'll be like, yeah, I don't believe that shit, but
Yeah.
whatever, here.
Yeah.
You put it on the plate and I guess I'll take it. But
Yeah.
if giving a compliment back is actually a very good way of receiving compliments for those of you who don't know how to accept or take compliments.
Mm-hmm.
So I complimented his shirt, and then the rest of it was just kind of banter about Overwatch. And he talked about his brother, who he played Overwatch with. And then obviously I got to brag a little bit about my brother, because that's who I play Overwatch with. But he's a top 500 anime on PlayStation 4. So he's like cracked out of his mind at the game. So
Mm-hmm.
it was cool to be able to connect with someone on something that we both loved, but also to be able to have that nonviolent communication and to get coffee at the same time. So that was kind of hot. And
Nice.
then the other one, I was at work, and there's this driver. I work at UPS, so there's this driver that I've been cool with for a long time. He gives me a lot of financial advice. He's a very smart human being. He's actually the one who kind of guided me to do it, because I'd never done taxes for my stream before this year, as far as making a fair amount of money streaming. So I
Right.
had no clue what I was doing, and he literally went out of his way to like talk to me on the phone for like an hour to kind of be like, hey, so like here's something you can do, here's how you can deduct this, blah blah blah. So he's been a very helpful human being in general, and did not have to show that care towards me or anything, but he did. And he came in, and I did that how are you doing thing that you
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. How are you? Yeah.
Yeah, and he instantly clicked and understood what I was asking, and he's like, I'm tired,
Yeah.
and that's because this guy just fucking works like a horse, and it's
Yeah.
so that's what he loves to do. He loves to work, and he's like, I was like, did you not take any time for yourself this week? And he's like, I mean, I went out and shot a gun for like an hour and a half, and then went back and started working again. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
you need to take like a whole day to yourself. He's like, no. He's like, I'm about to start another business. I was like, dude, you need to relax and have some time with the kids. He's like, oh, the kids were there. He's like, I don't
Mhm.
know why. He's like, apparently his kids are very in love with construction and shit like that. So he's like, I
Sure.
give them tools and they're happy. I was like, okay, you're fucking weird, but all right.
Right. Right.
And that was the conversation. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
I learned a little bit more about him,
Yeah.
and he feels like someone cares about
Yeah.
him
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
his day to day.
Yeah,
And
and that might be
so
you might come back to that next time he's having a bad day where you ask him how he is and he knows specifically within you and your context that you guys have that like he knows what you mean
yeah,
versus everybody else when they come in they go, yeah, how are you? Yeah, that's great, wonderful, cool, later, so
100%.
yeah, so
So those are my two. If anyone in chat had nonviolent
any
communications
instances.
this week, because
Yeah.
that was your homework to attempt to have. It's okay if you didn't successfully do it.
Yeah, and it's okay if you didn't and then you went back over it in your head a day or 2 or 3 hours or however long later and then you said, fuck, that would have been a really good opportunity to use it. And because that's what happened to me. So like literally I gave this seminar, whatever, that's pushing it pretty hard. But I gave, we did this podcast and then a couple hours later I had the opportunity. I didn't even see it, right? Because we've been coded to talk in these types of terms and these types of languages with judgments and, shaming and evaluating specifically, calling to attention to different things we think people are doing, and then synonymizing that with how they make us feel, which is, nobody makes you feel anything, which was a big part of last week's conversation. You can't make anybody feel anything. You feel things dependent on the way you react to situations and how, based on your traumas and your environment and your current mental state, and then how you're feeling in general, you react a certain way, right? So even if you didn't have the situation that you wanted to, it's really interesting and kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's a good way to connect back to yourself to kind of analyze and say, well, how could I have handled that differently, right? And maybe next time you still won't be able to do it, right? But it's about planting those seeds and then eventually using that communication path and that communication way as a muscle to build it, becoming stronger and stronger and stronger until it kind of becomes your natural thing to do. You kind of just slide into, I've done this so many different ways that I know how to do this mechanically, and I care so much about this person that I want to implement this type of communication to them. So
Yeah.
exactly,
So
Ramsey. Everybody's human. It's so impactful to show that you genuinely care about how someone's doing right. And that's what MVC teaches you in terms of having that motivation. It's about really empathetically connecting with a person, because there's a little teaser in the request section. It's really important to voice your request as not a demand, but as a request, kind of going back to the beginning of this whole thing. What you're doing is you're trying to personalize your experience and give the opportunity to the other person to make your life more enriching, right? And they should see that as a gift. They shouldn't see that as a burden. And a lot of the times when they do see that as a burden, it's because we present it in a way that says, I would really like you to do this because whatever. We present it with a judgment tied to it, or an implication for punishment or reward if they do something right. And it's not about that. It's really about empathetically and compassionately connecting with them.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's about loving each other. Really showing
Exactly.
them how they can love you, and also showing them that you love them. Even if it is just the guy at the coffee shop or a coworker. So I think if you had any NVCs last week, let's hear about them. I want specific examples, Paul. And if you had opportunities but missed them, let's hear about those too, so that people can start. This will help other people identify those things. And then we'll take a moment to read those. But for now, we're going to get started on the meat of the subject, and then hear
the mechanics.
I'll find a breaking point where we can actually stop and read everybody's examples of NVCs or missed opportunities at NVCs. And this is nothing to be embarrassed about. You're not the only people who are going to miss them. Your NVCs might not be as impactful in your opinion as someone else's, but regardless, they're still what they are, and they're still, you're taking the baby steps to achieve communication that other people aren't even thinking about every day, and that alone is huge, in my opinion.
That's huge.
So,
and like I said, I gave the talk, and I had 10 hours later, I basically dropped the ball. And it's just about learning. It's like, well, okay, I did drop the ball, but nonetheless, what can I do to put myself in a position where next time I could better recognize the situation, right? And that might be reading more of the book. That might be, talking with the person that it happened with, whatever that might be, right? It's still important to recognize those situations and see what you can do better the next time they occur. So, but yes, I mean, mechanically speaking, a lot of the times you'll hear NVC referenced as, I've heard a couple times references as OFNR. O is observation, feeling, F is feeling, N is need, and then R is request. A lot of the times people like to I've heard this in different podcasts where they take NVC and they really simplify it down to the mechanics of the process. And that's good. But again, I think the biggest part, which was the first section of this podcast, was about the motivation behind the mechanics. So I'm glad that we have kind of the foundation built to where we understand what the motivation needs to be, or what it should be, I should say. It doesn't have to need to be, so that we can actually implement it and apply it properly to a place where everybody's life is more enriching in its own separate way, whether we're contributing to it or whether they're telling us a way that we can contribute to it even more in an enriching manner. So right off the bat, the first part is observation. And that is incredibly, in the language that we've been coded to speak, observing without evaluating is really difficult, because we have always been taught to observe somebody's behavior and then tie an inherent evaluation to it. So even when somebody is doing something we don't like, we can't just say, in a nonviolent way, we can't just say, hey, when you do this, I feel this because this need is not being met. Could you do this instead? We can't just say, hey. We basically say it in a way that infers or kind of implies judgment. So a lot of the times is a story from the book itself, where the guy, the leader of the workshop, kind of came to this school, and a lot of these teachers had a problem with the superintendent. And he essentially asked them, well, what's the problem with the superintendent? And the only things they gave him were just evaluations, right? They gave him stuff like he talks too much, or he has a big mouth, or he wants to be the center of attention, or he thinks he's the only one who has anything worth saying, right? And all of those things aren't actually what he was doing. Those are things that they thought of him, or thought that he was doing, or thought that he thought, right? He talks too much as an opinion. It's an evaluation. He has a big mouth as an opinion. It's evaluation, right? He wants to be the center of attention is not how you think or how you feel or why you think he's doing things. It's an evaluation of what his behavior is. In reality, describing what the person does as the first token of observation is incredibly important, because if you apply an evaluation right off the bat in nonviolent communication, what that does is it closes the person off to any future attempts in that same string of conversation to be more open to you expressing your needs compassionately, right? When you evaluate right off the bat and you say, you're just a hurtful person, right? Like that's not opening anybody up to anything. That's judging them, and that's passing an evaluation on their behavior. And maybe it's giving them an idea of how you feel as a result, but it's incredibly not specific. And specificity is kind of the gold standard in a lot of different places in NVC. The observations need to be specific to time and the context in which you're observing it, right? So there's a lot of different ways that our language codes that into us. So, a lot of the times, even the way we talk, if you were to take a step back and say, hey, is this an evaluation or is this an observation? A lot of the times people would tie themselves to the fact that it is an observation when in reality it's not. There's some sort of implicit evaluation kind of put into it, right? Like, for example, if somebody needs more time with their significant other, the first way to start the conversation that typically is seen in our type of language, which is more violent in nature, is you're always busy, right? You're always busy is not an observation of it's an observation of the other's behavior, but it's also an evaluation in the sense of, you're saying to them what they're actually doing, right? The right or the correct, the more nonviolent way, the way that we would want to communicate that type of feeling or that type of idea is not to evaluate and say you're always busy. It might be better conversed in, as often as I say I want to talk to you, you're busy and it makes me frustrated, right? That way you're saying, I want to talk to you. It seems to me that anytime I want to talk to you, you are busy. And that makes me frustrated, right? Because my need for whatever that might be, right? If it's a significant other, it might be love, it might be affection. If it's a business partner, it might be the need to run a successful business, right? It's specific to context, right? Which feeling, and then which need tied to that feeling isn't being met, right? So, like, for example, even something as simple as, I do this a lot in sports, right? I say, well, Ben Roethlisberger fucking sucks, right? he's just terrible. He's old and he's shitty, right? But in reality, what's happening is we're denoting ability without acknowledging the fact that an evaluation has taken place, right? In reality, Ben Roethlisberger may or may not be a good football player, but what I'm actually saying is Ben Roethlisberger hasn't thrown a touchdown in 6 games. That's where I'm getting the inference from, right? And in my mind, I'm doing all of this calculation and saying, well, because he hasn't thrown a touchdown in 6 games, he's a shit football player. And we skip right over that evaluation section and we go right to the observation, and we form the observation in a way that even tricks ourselves into thinking that it is true and it's legitimate, right? So it's really important when you're phrasing, especially when you're talking to somebody that you care, especially when it's a difficult situation already to bring up, or if it's touchy-feely in the sense that that it doesn't make you feel super good to talk about this or to bring it up with somebody. It's really important to kind of observe without evaluating, and that's really, really, really difficult, because that's where I fucked up. Full disclosure, last week is I did not observe without evaluating. I evaluated it and I gave an adjective for the behavior, which is not what you want to do. You want to say, hey, it makes me feel sad when you say X, right? That's kind of a backwards way of doing it. It makes me feel when you say X, which is the observation, because my need for whatever compassion, connection, empathy, happiness, whatever is not being met, right? And then you give the request. So it's the first part of the mechanics of the concept, but it's really, really hard to implement successfully without a lot of practice, because our evaluations are coded into language so much so that we ourselves, in a vacuum, when we're asked, is this an evaluation? You'll be like, no, no, of course not. It's an observation. But then when you kind of change your perspective a little bit, you go, oh, wow, it is an evaluation. It's how I inherently think about a person, or it's how I'm passing my own opinion, or I'm trying to persuade somebody else into thinking the thing that I'm thinking. So I'm going to evaluate within my observation and then just call it an observation, right? So it's one of the more difficult things to do, to kind of separate observation from evaluation. But it's also very important. You know, observation is specific to time and context. And when you're telling somebody something in a nonviolent way, or in a way that you want them to be persuaded in an empathetic way to help you, you want to do it so in a way where you're just saying what they're doing specifically in the time and context, and not saying you're hurtful, or you just don't care about how I feel, or you know, if it's, you know, lack of whatever it may be, you're doing this and I'm it's right. We want to do it in a way where we're observing without attaching any kind of evaluatory judgmental phrasing to it. And again, I drive this point home. It's incredibly difficult. It's the first step, and it's really, really hard because of the way that we've been coded to think and to speak to each other. And in a way, it's kind of heartbreaking, because what we're doing when we're evaluating right off the bat is we're turning that person off from our own needs and from our own feelings. And they're that much less, what's the word? They're that much less
inclined.
Exactly. Thank you. They're that much less inclined to help us out in a way that enriches both people's experience in life, because what they're hearing is not what they did. What they're hearing is what you thought they did, or how they made you feel based on what they did, kind of hybridized or synergized into one phrase, right? So it's
you're infusing your opinions into
exactly is what you're doing,
factual matter. And I think two big things with that is learning how to accept that you're not always right, because a lot of human beings, it's their nature to instantly think I'm right and you're wrong. This is what I think, and that's why it's right. And not all human beings think the same, so you can't just throw all of that on a plate and give it to someone and expect them to eat it. Sometimes you got to dissect what went into making these thoughts, what went into creating this this visual that you're seeing, because you may see someone going to work a lot and need to spend time with them, and you may be like, well, you're dedicating more time to your work than me, so your work's more important than me. Whereas what they see, especially, this is like a big woman to man thing, with the man working a lot. That's the common thing. That's not always the thing, but it's the common thing.
Right.
And they'll be like, wow, you know, you're not giving me the time I need, so you must not care about me. But what a guy sees is, I'm only here for you. I'm only working to put money in the bank account to pay our bills, to take care of you, to be able to buy you things, to be able to invest in us. So like, there's a lot of men out there, like that coworker that I talked to, that he just works a lot. That's what he puts his blood, sweat, and tears into working all the time. And I guess fortunately for him, he's able to incorporate his kids into that, and so he gets a lot of kid time through his work. But not everyone can do that. I think one thing that's really important in those situations is to also recognize where they might be right, as well as where you might be wrong as you're having these communications, because you can say how you feel and everything, and you can say it nonviolently. That doesn't mean they're gonna take it and accept it, and it's gonna turn everything around. All that means is that you've put your foot forward to do this in a nicer manner, in a loving manner, as opposed to what can be viewed as a hateful manner.
Right.
If you're attacking someone, as opposed to presenting them with your emotions and your thoughts. So I guess what Michael's really getting at is, speak the facts and make sure that the opinions are known as opinions, and not like you're not presenting your opinions as facts. Like, you don't want to be throwing your opinions on a plate and saying this is what it is, because that's oftentimes that's what's going to start an argument or start
It's going to put the other person on the defensive or on the
Yeah,
counterattack because
exactly.
they're not going to feel like you're trying to connect with them. They're going to feel like you're judging them, right? Or they're going to feel a lot of the times in today's society, it's the you too fallacy, right? You say something, well, you're doing this wrong, and then a lot of people turn around and go, well, the last 5 times I said this, you also did that wrong, so therefore we're both wrong, and we both have an equal wrongness, and then you don't get
Yeah.
anywhere,
Well, and
right? So
everybody's
it's
guilty of this. Everybody in
exactly
the world
everybody
is guilty
exactly.
of this. There's not one person that you're going to meet that has not done this exact thing that we're talking about. Speaking in opinions instead of truths, and making your opinion seem to be fact. That is not an abnormal thing for humans to do. So with that, I think now is a good point to, if you have any comments, Mike, about NVCs from last week, read those up, and then I have a couple, I think, that I can read up.
You can read them. Go start.
Okay, Paul says, I think I only speak in NVC because I literally find reasons to talk to everyone. Karen calls me Mr. Mayor because when we go out, it's like I'm meeting my constituents. I think that's an interesting way to view it. To view it almost like how a politician does go out and just make a point to talk to people and get to know people. That is kind of how NVCs work, to be honest. When politicians go out and they talk to people,
hopefully at least.
Well, yeah, let's take, for example, like Beto O'Rourke specifically, because I've watched him do it live on Facebook. I've seen how he talks to people. He's very good at nonviolent communication. He goes up and I think what he attacks the most is when he does talk to people, it's what do you care about? And that's it. Like, and then he explains why he cares about that too. And that's a simple thing that you can do to make people feel like what they care about matters and like they matter. So that's an easy way to approach the idea of nonviolent communication. And Creasy says, right, that's like the person who uses the phrase, the fact of the matter is, and then they proceed to state an opinion rather than give a true statement. Yep, that's exactly what we're talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Not throwing opinions in people's faces, but instead approaching it with both fact, and it's okay to state your opinions, but make sure it's very clear that you're stating them as opinions and not as factual matter.
Right, and that might not even have a place in an NVC. Right. That might not, like, you might just have a different part of the conversation that where you bring up those opinions, right? With NVC, obviously you want to start on a good foot with everything,
right?
But starting off on the right foot here, it's the root of where you're going to form your not argument. I shouldn't say that. It's the root of where you're going to try to empathetically connect with the other person. It's your observation. It's specific to the time and the context that it's happening. There's a quote, I don't remember who said it, but it was in the book, and it's observing without evaluating is the highest form of human intelligence. Because it's very, very difficult to do.
It reminds me of debate.
Yeah.
Because I did like a lot of debating in high school. And what they teach you in debate is, first off, to have your emotions under control. And second off, to understand that it's not an argument. That the only thing that you can do from one side and the thing, I went to a private Christian school. So oftentimes when we were doing the debates, it was... one of my classmates would stand up and they would stand on a matter from a Christian perspective, and then they would make me play almost to the sense of devil's advocate and stand on like a Muslim perspective or on a Catholic perspective or whatever it may have been, and we would debate. And learning how to debate from both sides, because even if I was a Christian, debating from a Muslim standpoint meant that I needed to know facts and not opinions. And so it's almost like the concept of you're not arguing when things start to get into a disagreement. You're debating. And what that is it's almost like the concept of meeting in the middle, or showing someone the facts that made you believe what you believe, and allowing them to show you the facts as well that make them believe what they believe, and then coming to an understanding is what debate is all about. That's not to say that all nonviolent communications are going to be a debate, because some of them are just day-to-day meeting, letting someone know you care, but the more deep ones are going to be the ones where it's deep-rooted with a problem that you may be having.
Right, exactly. And that's really where you can apply it to. Like, not every situation is going to call for NVC. You know, like some situations, there's parts of the whole seminar, whatever podcast series, there's parts of it where there is a there's something to be said about taking your emotions and walking away, not permanently, but temporarily, to where you can come to a place where, because if you get out of the place where you're trying to empathetically relate to the other person and have them change their behavior because they're willing to do it and not because they fear of you or they feel guilty because of something, you want to stay in a place where that's more conducive to the conversation style. You don't want to go to a place where you're angry, where you're hot-headed, where you're mean, because that's essentially where the types of conversations that we all have been so just coded into us, how we've been taught to converse with other people, that's where they come from. They come from the emotionally laden places where we're not trying to connect out of an empathetic, compassionate need to connect. We're trying to connect to force them to do something, or we're not even trying to connect. We're just trying to spew judgments on everybody because it's making us feel better at the time. Yeah. Right. But we need to understand that a lot of those times, those things that are coming are just the way that our needs aren't being met, because our needs not being met result in feelings that we have. If our needs are being met, our feelings are good. If our needs are not being met, our feelings are bad.
To Oh my God, I hate it when that happens. When you have a thought and then it just
gone forever
from your brain. Oh, what was I going to say? Hold on. Let me. There was one more.
Sure.
Lynn said, I failed at NVC this week trying to tell someone my needs, and I took the wrong course and said that he doesn't love me, which then caused a more difficult conversation.
Yep. Really that is an evaluation of what he is doing,
and that is an opinion.
Yeah, it's also an opinion. It's not a fact. It's what you think. It's how you think he feels.
Right.
When in reality, it's difficult. It's right, and Lynn gets that, right. It's really difficult, especially in the heat of the moment, especially when we've built up all of this tension with these conversations. It's really hard to not just snap back into how we're comfortable in talking.
Everybody in the world's guilty of that, by the way. That,
right. Exactly.
You don't love me thing.
Right.
I'm guilty of that 100%. I was guilty of that for the past 2 months, honestly. That's one of my biggest inner struggles, is failing to see someone else's love for me. And a lot of that has to do with actions speaking louder than words, but it also correlates with the fact that you're not their brain, so you can't really say they don't love you. You don't know if they love you, and people make mistakes. And you can't that's one of the other things, is having expectations versus communicating your needs. You can't just expect someone to do something that you need them to do. You have to be able to communicate that to them in a non-violent way. And that's what this whole thing is about, is being able to communicate your needs and to be able to communicate to learn their needs. And the thing that slipped out of my brain was it's okay, and is actually encouraged by pretty much every professional out there, that if you are in a talk and you do start to lose those grips on your emotions, or you start to lose those footing, so to speak, you're losing your balance when it comes to being able to keep things factual and not opinionated, and keep things realistic and rational. It is okay and encouraged to take a break. Literally, and to call a break. Say, okay, I need even if they don't need a break, if you need a break, you need a break. And you just say, I need a break. It can be 15 minutes, it can be 30 minutes, go on a walk, do whatever you want to do. Take a break, get away from those emotions, and then come back to it with a fresh perspective after you've taken time to absorb everything, and then continue. It is not impossible to continue the nonviolent communication about what you were talking about.
Because the mechanics make it, I don't want to say the mechanics make it easy, because I'm downplaying how difficult it is, but the mechanics give you the blueprint of how to slide seamlessly back into the conversation. So in Lynn's perspective, for example, with Lynn and what happened, a lot of the time it's you say, oh, I don't think you love me, whatever, right? Argument happens, you take a step back, you come back to it, right? The first step of NVC, first of all, you acknowledge that you want your significant other to hear your emotions and feelings in a way that makes them want to connect to you. The way they should receive it is, oh my God, these things that I've been doing have been not meeting your needs, and as a byproduct, you've been feeling in this quintessentially negative way. Because I love you, I want to put my behaviors more in line so as to enrich your life in a greater way, in a more positive way. And the way you communicate that's essentially what your job as the person with the feelings and the needs that aren't being met. And it's a big job and it's a difficult job and it's really hard to do, but nonetheless, you have to do it type of thing. Is to communicate in a way that fosters that kind of empathy from the other party. So instead of, I'm not picking on Lynn or anything, it's just a really good example. Instead of, hey, you don't love me, it's, your one of your needs is not being met and you're feeling a certain type of way, but we can just rewind that a little bit. What do you observe specifically in the context in a situation that they're doing or not doing? More better to say what you're doing, because what you're not doing, whatever. But either way, we're going to be lenient here. What are they doing or not doing that is eliciting the types of feelings that you're feeling? Right? Maybe it's
Well,
coming
this
home late.
also always just circles right back to the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
A deeper understanding of yourself is required to be able to let someone else understand you. If you don't know what the 5 love languages are, literally go look up the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman. You can read the book. You can get it on Audible. It's not long. It's a very easy read. And you can also take a quiz on his website to find out what your love languages are if you can't figure that out. But there are 5 different basic forms of love that you can, especially in a relationship, that you can show each other. And so, like, let's say one of Michael's big love languages are gift giving, and he doesn't know that about himself personally. He doesn't just identify that, and he's in a relationship with someone, and they never buy him gifts ever. They've never bought him one gift. And they've been together for a while, and it makes him feel a lot of things, but he doesn't know how to approach them and be like, hey, so instead he jumps to this, you just don't love me.
Right. Or passive aggressive shit, like they buy a gift for somebody's birthday, a specific occasion, and you go, would it kill you to buy me a gift every now and again? Right.
Yes.
And then what does that do? Right. Unless that other person that you just said that to is incredibly well versed in NVC, and that's so difficult to find, the immediate reaction is going to be, what the fuck do you mean? Right? It's going to be, well, shit, they're attacking me. I'm going to go on the defensive. I'm not going to be open. I don't care about the love languages anymore. I don't care how he's feeling. I'm feeling attacked. Right? And we feel attacked so frequently that we have these defense mechanisms. Right? So in reality, it's like Kaz is saying, it would behoove me to know how I like to receive and show my own love, so that I can communicate that effectively to my significant other and say, listen, my love language is receiving gifts. Your love language might be quality time, in which case, you should communicate that. And I know how you enjoy being shown love, and I know how I enjoy being shown love, and we can better align ourselves to make ourselves feel more fulfilled naturally from the relationship, versus brooding up this negative energy that happens when love languages are unknown and we're just not self-aware.
Yes. For those of you that are having relationship struggles, it doesn't matter if you're married, if you're dating, if you're just interested in someone, I highly recommend if you have Audible, get the book on Audible. If you don't have Audible, because on Audible, the author that wrote it actually is the one who reads it and presents it.
Same with NVC. Yeah.
It's incredible. Which that's the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman. And then what was yours? Do you know what it was called?
Oh, my book?
Yeah.
Oh, nonviolent communication.
That's
the language of life.
All it's called is just nonviolent communication.
Yeah. It's by Rosenberg. Yeah.
And that's 2 of the big topics that, honestly, the love languages fall into every topic so far for me when it comes to anything.
No, they definitely do. A lot of the topics, what you learn is when you kind of go into therapy and you kind of dive into the self-help, self-care pool, is a lot of the concepts overlap. There's probably like 100, 200 piece Venn diagram, and every one of those concepts overlaps with one other concept in one way or another. There's a place where NVC overlaps with love languages. There's a place where anger and resentment wraps into NVC. There's a place where love languages wrap into anger and resentment. There's so many places where there's overlap. And the more that you kind of give yourself into these, interests in self-care and mental health and being more connected to yourself and to your other people in your relationships and in your life, whether it's your teachers or your significant other or your friends or whoever it may be, the more you'll be in line with understanding life through that lens. And I feel like life will be a lot more fulfilling.
And I think it's important that we also, I saw this the other day and needed to approach this as we're starting this journey, because some people might get the wrong idea about what Confide is doing with this mental health awareness podcast, and with what we're doing with our communities. We have opened the doors to our streams. If anyone ever needs to come talk about something going on in their life, there is no judgment in our chats. You're also always welcome to message our pages if you need to talk privately. But I think it's very, very important that we stress that we are not professionals at all. We are not professionals, and we are not responsible for your mental health.
Everybody else is responsible for their own mental health.
Like Michael is not responsible for my happiness.
No.
My wife, not responsible for my happiness. There's only one person in this world that is responsible for my happiness, and that's me. It's very important that you identify that if you are struggling out there, that you are the one responsible for your own happiness. There's a very known and loved streamer here on Facebook Gaming that I have been close to for a long time, Igor's Lair, and he has had to come out recently because of harassment that has been going on with him and his mods and with him and his community, because people are going in expecting professional therapists out of moderators.
And he called it something I had never heard of before, which is a very good way of expressing it. He called it compassion fatigue. Yeah, and I get that. I totally understand that, because you can only hold as much space as you can, right? That's what they call it in the biz. It's called holding space. You can only hold as much space as you can, right? Everybody's cup eventually is going to be filled with stuff. And if you can't hold space for another person, you should express that. And the other person should have the wherewithal to be like, listen, like, I can't confide in you right at this particular moment because of one thing or another, right? And I should go and find a different, hopefully professional outlet to get this out. So what Casual's saying is really important. We're not pros. We're not going to give you a diagnosis. We haven't gone to school for any of this shit. We're just bringing awareness to a lot of the things that have helped us through our journey, and kind of giving a roadmap to anybody who wishes to have it.
Well, and we're even bringing techniques forward from research we've done and from stuff that our therapists have given us. Which is a very big source of material for those of you who can't afford therapy. But if there ever comes a point where any of you reach out to us and we feel that a line has been crossed to the point that you need professional help, I just want you to know that we don't want you to take that personally, and we don't want you to think that we're abandoning you, because we're not.
No.
But we are going to be very honest and upfront with anyone that we do think needs professional help, and it's okay to need both
it's
Michael
totally
and
fine.
I have therapists.
Therapy,
We're literally both in therapy. So if anyone's not judging you for needing professional help, it's us. And literally. And so I think it's really important that we approach that and make it very clear that we aren't professionals, but we are here. Our chats are open to talk about your problems. And if you ever cross a boundary that we may have set for our own stream, we will be very clear, and we will do our best to have nonviolent communications. But please understand that we are not perfect human beings, and we will slip up. We're not going to be able to handle everything that's thrown at us. Brandy says, yes, I'm guilty of being defensive about something said about me when it could be meant to help me understand why I end up in the situations I end up in, but yet want to be heard without consequences. Right. So that's another thing, is comprehending when other people aren't well versed in nonviolent communication.
Yeah. A lot of the book teaches you how to empathetically receive, because nobody is well versed in it. So you're essentially doing both sides of the heavy lifting. You're expressing your own feelings nonviolently, but you're also receiving what they're saying in a nonviolent manner.
You're having to be the stronger person mentally.
Exactly. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end. It really is.
And then Lynn says, yes, breaks have really helped me get my feelings better, put in words and facts to come back later and tell them in a more healthy way. Yeah, that's super important. Taking breaks, that's exactly what they do. They help. Sometimes you just need time. Sometimes something's going to hit you and you're going to be in shock, and your emotions might flood you. You might be flooded with anger. You might be flooded with sadness. And the thing is those emotions can speak for you sometimes. Yep. You can speak out of anger. You can speak out of sadness. You can speak out of... but the thing is emotions are temporary most of the time. And what I mean by that is you may still feel sad, but you're not going to be flooded.
With sadness,
right? Flooding is temporary, I guess.
And what NVC also teaches you is to take responsibility for those feelings, and not in a chastising way, not in a negative way, not take responsibility for your feelings, but know that whatever you're reacting to is exactly that. Your feelings are how you react to the situation that's presented to you, and they might come from environment, they might come from past traumas, they might come from PTSD that you've had in your past relationships, whether romantic or personal or interpersonal, whatever it may be. Um, and sometimes you do need to take a step back and take a break because the reactions that you're getting are a little too strong for the specific instance that you're trying to implement NVC in right now. And somebody who's more well versed in it might understand that, but a lot of us, including myself, are just we would trip over our feet, and we'll say something wrong, and hopefully the other person, the other party is being empathetic in that particular instance. But you can always try, and it's about trying, and it's about implementing, and it's about extending and stretching that muscle so that next time it feels more. I don't want to say the word right because it's so generic, but it feels more natural. It feels like you're what you're doing is really leading to a more enriching life for both parties versus something else, right? And versus brooding resentment or judging incessantly, things like that.
That was one
Things
of
that
the
we've been taught
things
to do.
that the angry therapist talked about in one of his first episodes. That when I was listening to it was he was like, basically the brain is just like any other muscle in your body, and when you work out, you're actually tearing your muscles apart, and then they're rebuilding, and that's what makes them
Yep.
stronger. And so what he's saying is, in certain situations, you're going to have heartbreak, or you're going to have betrayal, or things happen to you, and what that's going to do is it's going to tear those brain muscles apart, but they're going to rebuild and be stronger because of it. And that's part of character building. It's that whole "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger" mentality. So bear an understanding that the bad things that do happen to you really do only in turn make you stronger and give you
They do.
more of an ability to love in the future, as long as you mold it that way and use those things to move forward.
Yeah. One of the big things that he said, I don't remember when it was, but one of the big things that he mentioned a while back was his opinion is that the heart, the point, one of the intrinsic values of the heart, one of the points, like the point of the heart's existence is to at some point get broken, because that is how we learn what is good and what is not good for us in
Right.
emotional situations, right? Hopefully, at least, right? People can repeat the same patterns, people can be serial monogamous going from relationship to relationship and not learning. But in in the utopian society, in kind of the perfect situation, in something that we want to kind of achieve in ourselves,
When
is we want
someone
to take
breaks you, you're going to know
exactly,
what they did to break you, and
yeah,
know
what they
what to
did.
avoid in the
And
future.
right, and in the bigger sense of it, at the end of a relationship, what's really important, and kind of what the angry therapist kind of teaches as well, what he champions is what he calls taking a black light to the relationship.
Yeah.
Right, what did I enjoy in the relationship, what didn't I enjoy in the relationship? Because then
Yeah, he
another concept.
said to
Yeah,
view
go ahead.
it as instead of viewing it as a highlight reel, which is what we tend to do, to view it as a
Yep.
documentary, which
Yeah.
means when let's say you've just broken up with someone and you're looking back on the relationship and you're just devastated about it, everything's breaking you down, and all you're looking at is all the good times. Well, that's a big reason why you're feeling the way you're feeling, is you're looking at the
Yep.
highlight reel as opposed to the documentary, where if you pull up the documentary, you're going to see every detail and all of the
Everything in
factual
between.
content, and you're going to
Yeah.
understand a lot
Yeah.
deeper what you're looking at and where you are now and why.
Yep. And that's what's important. And that's how your love buds change, as in your love buds, meaning what you are attracted to in an individual, right? Maybe the person that you were just with, they were really, really connected to you at an emotional and sexual level, but maybe they were also physically abusive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe after you get out of the relationship, you look back at the relationship in a documentary style fashion and not in a highlight reel, right? In a highlight reel mentality, it might be, oh, our sex was so great and we were just so connected all of the time. Documentary might be, our sex was good, we were connected, but she physically abused me in more instances than not, right? Or he physically abused me in more instances than not, whatever it may be. Um, it's important to kind of see that and understand that, hey, I don't deserve the abuse, whatever kind it was, mental, physical, emotional, whatever it was, and to craft your love buds into attracting somebody later that doesn't do that, because that's
Right.
essentially what you're doing when you're taking the black light to the relationship. You're saying, what am I interested in, what am I not interested in, what are my new non-negotiables or my old non-negotiables, right? And non-negotiables are things you're not going to put up with in a relationship anymore. And that's the hope, that's the pie in the sky of where we hope to get at the ends of our relationship, so that we don't kind of are in this cycle of repetition where we come out of the relationship and we go, well, they were great and everything was great, let me just go to another person. And we come out of that and we go, wow, they were great, that was great, let me just go to another person. Right? It's more so about connecting with ourselves and saying, what part of them spoke to me? What am I looking to get out of my next relationship? And who is going to meet that criteria of how I'm going to connect with somebody? Right? Am I going to put up with this? Am I going to put up with this? What did I like? What didn't I like? And a lot of people I have one particular friend that comes to mind who is a serial monogamist, and I hope that they get to a point where they understand that they have so much, because when you're doing this serial monogamy, what you're actually doing is you're backlogging all of this stuff that you need to do, all of this growth, right? And backlogging, you might not even remember what your relationship was like in high school, and even if you don't, it might still be the case that that relationship in high school formed your self-worth quotient. It formed what you're interested in other people. It might have been the chain reaction that set you off into monogamy, right? And sooner rather than later, hopefully, some people go their entire life without doing this. But we want to be more connected individuals, everybody here, obviously. Hopefully at some point they come to the realization of saying, hey, I've been serially monogamously dating all the time, and I have never really taken a step back and taken a look at my relationship and said, hey, these are the things that I enjoy, these are the things that I didn't, and what am I looking for out of my next relationship, right? Because what I've noticed with them specifically is it's just, who's interested in me, right? And that's a need of his own that he's trying to meet, right? So it's important kind of to drive the point home, at the end of those experiences, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, to take as objective of a lens as possible over your relationship, and it's okay to admit that you had bad times with somebody. Like, that's totally okay, right? Like, there's probably a reason that you guys aren't together anymore, which is fine. But it's important to kind of take that black light over the relationship and learn from, not necessarily mistakes, but just learn in general. What are you interested in? What do you want? What don't you want specifically? And then to craft your kind of what you're interested in, as you go forward in life. So
Yeah, 100%. I think that's also like tailing off of that. A lot of people that do fall into that loop, they fall into it out of fear of being alone.
yeah,
And that was one other thing that the angry therapist said, is that fear is the shadow cast by your own hand. And so, like, to comprehend that your fears are just things that you create, and
yep.
they're not always, really, they're probably never really real fears. But
No. I'd make the argument that you need to be alone
yeah,
after the
well,
relationship.
everyone does. Everyone needs to be
Yeah.
alone.
You need to reconnect with yourself
The
and do
taking
that
the black
soul
light,
searching.
taking the black light to the relationship and assessing everything and viewing the documentary as opposed to the highlight film isn't just a 1 hour. Okay, well yeah. No, it's like,
Cool. Great. Yeah. Exactly.
I guess think about it from the perspective of how long were you in a relationship. Let's say you were in a relationship for a year. It's probably going to take you closer to a year to really assess all of those things. And that's not to say that you can't get into another relationship within that year, but be good to yourself. You deserve time. You deserve time. At the end of the day, that's what you need to understand as a part of loving yourself, is you deserve that quality time and that self-love, and you need to be able to give it to yourself. A lot of the times you have a problem in a relationship is because you failed to love yourself. And so a lot of that time you need to also assess, hey, how can I go about loving myself? And that falls right back into the love languages as well. Let's say your love language is buying gifts, or your love language is quality time. Well, you can buy gifts for yourself. You can spend quality time with yourself. You can love yourself. And I know that this whole buying gifts thing might seem materialistic to a lot of people, but it is a love language. Thought is love's currency. And the fact that you're thinking of yourself is an act of loving yourself. And that's what you're doing when you're buying a gift for anyone, is you're thinking of them. And so Creasy says, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer. I matured really fast growing up because I had to learn how law works, and since involved in a forensics case, in one stage case, I had to debate the facts of the case. Rather than looking to a judge to give me an answer, I had to look at notes, things that happened once in real time while speaking to a jury, without forcing opinions, saying, I think this person did the crime because X said he did it outside of a taped interrogation, and a courtroom will immediately be considered hearsay. Stating facts to help someone believe you is more important than growing angry and shouting an opinion. Okay, yeah, I see where this is going. So basically, the concept of, oh wow, yeah, it goes way deeper. That is so long, though, Creasy. Immediately considered hearsay, tried to give true statements to the jury. He ended up getting convicted of murder. And once you told your story, you stayed up for 36 hours when you found out he was guilty of murder, even though you knew you told the truth, and multiple people told me that I needed to seek professional help for such a traumatic experience, but I shunned the potential drugs and kept pushing forward to see that justice was carried out. I felt better when it was. I thought I helped speak for a dead man, and I didn't have to shout across a courtroom to get my point across. That's deep. That's a lot to go through. And that's also, that right there, I'm going to tell you off rip, that's something to seek a professional's help about. If that's something you're struggling with. Those deeper issues, those deep things that, anything that is traumatic to the point that it's affecting your sleep or affecting your mental health in any way, shape, or form, especially if it's something that you're going through that most other people don't go through. That's something that, like me, I'm not going to be able to understand what you're feeling.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
And a professional is not going to be able to understand it, so to speak, but they're going to know more about how to approach taking care of it and taking care of your brain. So that's one of those things where I'd point you to a therapist instantaneously and be like, yeah, you need to talk to a professional if you're still struggling with that.
And there's a lot of concepts that are commingled into therapy, right? I came into therapy on the back end of a previous relationship, and we're deep in mom land now. Like that's where that's a lot of the issues are, we went from relationships to father not being there, dad not being there, to other issues at work, to self-care and how we're thinking, and now we're on the mom train, right? So it's a lot of these issues are interconnected, and that's what a therapist helps you kind of take out of the situation, right? Because we're so involved in our life, we don't have that objective viewpoint from outside of ourselves to kind of use as a barometer of how we're growing and what we need to do and where those emotions and those feelings are coming from. So they in a nutshell, if we're speaking in NVC terms, I think a therapist helps you connect your feelings to the needs that aren't being met in the most simplified way possible. Because a lot of the times the feelings that you have are complicated, they're negative. People with chemical imbalances as well, those feelings, sometimes they need the medication, right? And what a therapist helps is to kind of assess that and analyze it from the objective perspective. 100% Ramsey. It's definitely a journey, not a marathon. Yeah. So it's a slow burn, right? And it's going to be working that muscle, working that brain, and then really opening yourself up to empathetically connect and receive from another person. So, well, that's the observation module.
That's one letter.
That is one letter. We still have F, N, and R. So. And there's a whole slew of ways that we express our feelings that are also alienating other people. So I can go into another entire hour about feelings.
The F is feelings?
The F is feelings, yeah. O, F, and R, observation, feeling, need, request. So, I mean, observation touched a lot of different things, man. Observation touched love languages. It touched, being open. It touched how to observe without evaluating, how to accept the fact that all we do is evaluate instead of just observe objectively. And, I think in the future, all of these concepts kind of play off of each other. So we're going to come back in the future and say, remember that time when we talked about observations and how we were trying to not evaluate and just observe, how we're trying to not alienate other people to our needs and not have them be on the defensive or have them feel like they need to be on the counterattack, right? A lot of those concepts are going to come up again later on in the different sections of especially nonviolent communication. So
we can turn this into a 4-parter.
Hell yeah.
I'm not tripping about that.
I'm not either, yeah, and we don't have to have it every week, so.
I'm
for NVC, I mean.
So I think that we should definitely try to finish off NVC as
I agree,
Today I'm actually getting ready to schedule a lot of future podcasts with a lot of people that are influencers, some streamers, some
On the
book
platform.
writers. Yeah, no, just all over. Book writers, musicians, artists, people who have gone to school for psychology. After our first episodes, I had a lot of people reaching out to me personally to be on this, which is amazing because
That is cool.
I feel like it just shows that we are doing something that is impacting others. So I think homework wise, let's see if we can get more people to put more music onto the playlist.
Yep.
Excuse me. There is actually a lot on the playlist, and I've been listening to it, and it's been awesome. It's really cool to be able to see because you can see who added stuff to the playlist. So I can see music that specifically impacts these people. And like kind of comprehend like, hey, this is what helps them. But it's also really cool because all the songs have helped me in ways that I didn't expect to be helped. And so especially like with dealing with anger and stuff, because I really never approach my anger. I kind of I've always had a deeper control over my own anger. So if anyone is interested in Spotify, in the music, definitely the playlist link is in Michael's chat and it's pinned in mine. The other thing, if you liked a lot of the stuff you heard tonight, from the fears, the shadow cast by your own hand, the taking the black light to the situation or watching the highlight reel as opposed to the documentary, the brain being a muscle and stretching, if you like those analogies, if you like those things that we were saying, and you have, I believe he's on Apple Music too, right?
He's on everything, yeah. He's on Instagram
so
as well.
It doesn't matter what platform you have, or even if you just want to follow him on Instagram, because I follow him on Instagram and he posts a lot of shit there too. He's called The Angry Therapist, and he's very well versed. He is a professional.
Yeah,
so
he is.
He's putting out a lot of info. I listen to him quite a bit now because of Michael pointing him out to me, which thank you for that.
Yeah, anytime.
Highly recommend his podcast. He's a lot shorter as well, so it's like if you just have 10 minutes in your day, that's what he does, is 10-minute podcast.
Therapy in a shot glass. And you don't necessarily have to go from episode 1 to 500. You can kind of, control F through the page and say, I'm going through a breakup or whatever, and I want to know how to connect back to myself, right? Or I'm having anger issues, or I don't like this, that, or the other, right? He probably has a 15-minute podcast about what you're going through, whether it be a concept that's related to it or kind of how to better put yourself in the mental state to empathetically receive and give in that situation as well. So he has a lot of good material. So,
and we will be doing this weekly. It might not always be me and Michael. There might be times where Michael needs a day off or I need a day off, and we let one or the other take over. We are going to be the main hosts of it, and when we bring guests on, it's usually going to be us and a guest. We are going to bring other Confide members on. There may be even times where we let other Confide members take over and me and Michael both need a break, or we're both on vacation. You never know what's going to happen. But the goal is to do a once a week podcast, for you guys and for us to be able to establish things and move forward. There's a lot of topics to cover. And we're really excited to share what we have in the future, which I'm going to start unrolling a lot of the things that and with the people that I've been talking to bring onto the podcast. I will be posting the episodes on YouTube by tomorrow. I promise. I'll post all of them on YouTube by tomorrow, and when we get it up on Spotify, we'll let you guys know. Aside from that, I think putting the songs on the Spotify playlist is really good. And then also, for those of you who haven't, go out this week and maybe with this observation podcast being a spotlight, try to observe and approach nonviolent communications in your day-to-day, and try to keep it hot on your mind. And it doesn't have to be within a debate or an argument.
It doesn't have to be with another person. You literally can just be like, what's going on right now, and then say what you're feeling, or however it is, say what you think is observing, and really take a moment to analyze, is it really an observation, or am I associating an evaluation to what I'm actually observing? Because the first step is to observe without evaluating, and that's very, very difficult, and it might take you a few tries.
And then for homework, this is the project right here. This one's really good. This is one thing my wife actually did last week was sent out this message to someone and wanted them to be able to do this. And this is, I'd hope that everyone would love to share this with us next week. It may not, or may be a thing, but anyone that is in here listening, go out of this and spend the rest of the week, and I want you to write down 3 things that you love about yourself. And this can be physical traits, this can be non-physical traits, whatever it is, just 3 things that you love about yourself. And if you're comfortable, bring that to the chat next week. We want to hear it. We want to know that that we're impacting you in ways that we don't even know.
It's a form of self-connection.
And so Michael and I will do the homework.
We will as well. Yeah.
We'll fucking, it might be hard, but we'll come up with 3 things.
Definitely.
And we'll bring that to you guys next week, and we'll see you guys next week around the same time. We're gonna cut it off now. It's been literally good timing, very good timing with this one. And if you guys enjoyed this, make sure you share it out, and be here next week.
Alrighty.